I'm joining you here today to talk a bit about Linux user management and to specifically cover some of the tasks required in your exercise with user administration and permissions. So let's get started. The first question asks us to create a user named Bob Smith that uses the dash shell as its default and then has a description or comment associated with the account. We're not given any specific directives about what that comment needs to be, so it's open up to a bit of your own creativity. Now, if you do not remember from your Linux studies, some of the basics of account creation, let's review. Remember that there were two kinds of commands for user account creation. There's the elemental commands or base or primitive commands, and those are of the format a noun followed by a verb. So user add or group add, group mod. Those are the forms of the base commands. And then we also learned about a we'll call wizard type command for adding a user. And that took the form of a verb followed by the noun. So add user. And that wizard type command sort of alleviated some of the mistakes that might be made when you add an account, like forgetting to set the home directory or forgetting to set a password, which is done in a completely separate step when you use the base command. But sometimes we actually want to use that base or low-level command because we're asked to do some things that aren't built in to the wizard command. If you don't quite remember all the syntax, if you didn't learn anything else in your Introduction to Linux class, you should have learned that your go-to strategy is to use the man page. So let's give that a try. Over here, we're going to use man and user add. And we're going to learn that, something obvious, we can create a new user or also update some default user information using this command. And it is the low-level utility. I call it the base command or the primitive command. It is on Debian, they do recommend that you use the upper level command, add user, instead. But when you have to do some specific things, you may still need this low-level utility. So let's go down and see some of the flags that we can use with user add. Okay, we can create a default base directory. We can add a comment. So we want to make a note of that because that's exactly what we were asked to do with a text string. And we are going to also specify a shell. So where is that information? We can go down through the flags and see that, down here, this -s specifies a shell, and we can add the name of the user's login shell. So we can queue to quit, and very likely we need to use account elevation. So I'll do sudo user add, and I want to add a comment, and we'll just say his name is the comment, and we'll want to use bin dash as his shell, and then the new name. I'm going to just put in my password, whatever your password is. And the command completes. Remember, sometimes in Linux, you don't really get much warm and fuzzies. You just get the command prompt back. And so you can say to yourself, well, wonder if that actually worked. Well, what happens when we enter the command to create a user? That information is put into the etc passwd file, right? So let's look at the end of that file with the tail command and see what we have. So we can see that we have a new user, Bob Smith, and there's a comment, and there in the last field is the specification for Bob's default shell. Let's set a password on Bob's account and enter the new password. Well, let's try to make something that we're not going to forget. So we're just going to make his password his name, which something you should never do in reality. But we can see that his password is now updated successfully. So the account is completely created. We can look at the last few lines in the etc shadow file, and whoops, remember that you have to use account elevation, because not just every Joe can go looking at the etc shadow file. We'll need account elevation, and we can now see Bob Smith is there. There's this very long hashed password entry and some other criteria for the account login durations and so forth. So it looks like we are on our way. Tasks 2 and 3 are really following the same basic construct, and so I will leave it up to you to study the flags that are necessary to complete those tasks. Do not forget to use sudo passwd to set the password appropriately on these accounts. Now we're asked to create a file, onboard.txt. That file can include any written information to your liking, but you want to make sure that every new user will see this file in their home directory. This is something that you should recall from Introduction to Linux. There is a certain subdirectory under the /etc directory into which you can place all kinds of introductory files, configuration files, anything that you would like to be dropped into a newly created account's home directory. So it's going to be up to you to do a little research. It shouldn't be that difficult. You can just look up that directory underneath Etsy into which you populate files that you then want to be disseminated into user accounts. You will then create a file called onboard.txt, place that file in that special subdirectory, and then you're going to create a test user. This is at step 5 to verify that that onboard.txt file indeed exists in the newly created account's home directory. Remember, I always like to see more evidence rather than less. So when you take screenshots before you do an action and then explain to me what you did and then have an After Effects screen snippet, then you have adequately demonstrated that you've completed the task appropriately. At step 6, we are asked to disable Serena's password. And we're even given basically the method to do that with PASSWD with the -D flag. And then verify from the Etsy shadow file both before and after when this is done. So let's look over in Etsy shadow, and I don't yet have Serena's account because I haven't yet created it. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll sudo user add, and my specifications are including a home directory and a comment with her name. So a home directory, a comment with her name, and what else? Do all this in one single sudo command, and then change her password to Lil Sister. Okay, so we need to remember that the flags come first, and then the very last thing we need is the name that we want to give to the account. So we have done the sudo. I have set up my system so that I can do multiple account elevations without constantly being asked to re-enter the account elevation password. So your system might look a little bit different. You might be asked for the account elevation password more often. But we've created Serena's account, and now I want to change the password. It'll be LILSISTER and LILSISTER, and the password was updated successfully. And I'm going to go back through my history and now look at, again, use that account elevation, and I can see that I have Serena, the encrypted password, and again, some other aging information on the account. Now, I need to disable Serena's password as requested in step 6. And I have been told that the expiry information is changed. Now your job to complete step 6 is to go back and look at the Etsy shadow entry and discover or discern what has changed that would verify that Serena's password indeed is disabled. Should be pretty straightforward. Now, I want you to look at task 7, which asks for the difference between locking a user account and disabling a user account's password like we just did with password-d. And as requested, you are to research this. Again, it shouldn't be that difficult. There are so many Linux resources on the web, and you can just look up the difference between locking a user account and disabling a user account's password. At task 8, we are asked to make sure Serena must change her password in 10 days. So to solve this task, I direct you to the command age, short for, change aging. So let's go to our go-to command, the man page, and look at the age command. So this command allows us to do things like change the number of days between password changes and the date of the last password change. So what we were asked to do is make it so Serena must change her password in 10 days from now. To accomplish our tasks, we're going to have to look at a couple of the flags in age and interpret the behavior that is going to occur when we use these various combinations. So the dash small letter d says that the use of this flag sets the number of days since January 1st, 1970. Remember, that's that magic date called the epoch, like it was the beginning of time. So by specifying a number of days since January 1st, 1970, you're basically talking about right now, right? But you don't have to do all those calculations because you can also express in the format YYYY-MM-DD. So year, month, day format for the current day. Dash E, as we can see, capital E, is an expiration date. So you set the date or number of days, again, since that magic epoch date, on which the account will no longer be accessible. We don't need to list the account aging information, although in the future that may be helpful to us, so it's good to keep in mind. Number of warning days, and the capital M flag looks like it may be useful for us. We can read that -M and then a number sets the maximum number of days during which a password is valid. So when the user reaches or exhausts those max days, then the user will be required to change his or her password before being able to go forth and use his or her account. So this can be planned for in advance, so we're told, by using the capital W or a number of warning days, which will provide the user with a heads up that, hey, start thinking about a new password because you're going to be asked soon to provide one of those. Let's take a really close look at the max days definition so we really understand what it is we need to do to solve this problem in task number 8. -M, max day, says we need to set the maximum number of days during which a password is valid when max days plus last day is less than the current day. The user will be required to change his or her password before being able to use the account. So we need to review what was this last day thing again? Where did that come about? So we're going to look up in the file and remember that, oh, here is something that defines last day. So last day is a starting point, a metric, a measuring point. So we want her, Serena, to change her password 10 days from now. Okay, so that's our measuring point. So to solve this request for task 8, I'm going to use the -D flag with the year, month, and day format for today's date, along with the -M, and the max days will be what? 10 days. So that is how you will solve this directive in number 8. So it'll be the age command with the -D flag, the year, month, day specification for whatever day you're doing your assignment, right? And then the -M flag and 10. So should be easy enough. But now we're asked to make it so that every user on the system needs to change their password every 10 days. So how are you going to do that? I want to direct your attention again to the /etc directory, and we will go there and look in a file called login.defs. So let's first take a look in this file. We'll open login.defs with the VI editor. I'm not going to change anything yet. So here we have the file. Let's see if we can use search ahead to find out things about the password. And we jumped ahead in the file and found this section called password aging controls. And we can see that there's 3 main system variables. There's pass max days, pass min days, and pass worn age. And there are some definitions. Pass max days is the max number of days a password may be used. Well, that sounds exactly like what we need. So if we have to change our password every 10 days, then sounds to me like the maximum number of days the password can be used before it's forced to be changed would be 10. So right here and now, we can learn that by changing pass max days to 10, we will have the problem solved. So for this problem, number 9, make it so every user needs to change their password every 10 days. You don't actually have to change your login.defs file, because then you're going to have to change your password every 10 days going forward. So if you just temporarily, like in this case, I'm inside the VI editor and I can go over to this and change word and make it 10. I could do a screen snippet at this point and demonstrate that I know what I'm doing. And then, of course, I can quit QBang, which will quit without writing the file. Okay, so that is perfectly acceptable. You should be able to know which user add option allows you to name a home directory by, again, using the man page to do research. How can you see whether the password for the user Serena is locked or unlocked? So previous questions should have exposed you to locking and unlocking of a password, but you're asked to give a solution with grep and a solution with PASSWD. Let's look at the solution with PASSWD, and you can work on the one with grep. So if I look at the man page for PASSWD command, I can go down through the flags and see that there is a capital S flag for status. So it will display the account's status information. The status information consists of 7 fields. And one of those fields can tell us about a user account being locked. Okay? So if the second field has a locked password or no password or a usable password, there'll be some indications to that. So I honestly can't remember if I had completed the disabling of Serena's password. So let's just take a look at the status, and we'll see over here that, oh, again, forgot to do the account elevation. Not everybody is able to just look at other people's accounts. And yes, I can see that Serena currently has a valid password on her account, and that was done with the -S or status command. So how would you look at Serena's account otherwise? How would you do it with grep? Well, you would want to grep for Serena, right? And you would want to do that in what file? Well, where is the information about encrypted passwords? It's not in the Etsy PASSWD file. It's over in Etsy Shadow, right? And so, again, how many times am I going to do this? Let's do account elevation, and we can see that we have Serena's entire encrypted password in the file, which indicates to me that I have not disabled Serena's password. So if you go through the steps of the assignment, step by step by step by step, you will have some different results, but you'll know what commands to use. Now we've moved all the way down to step 11. That sort of asks us a little bit of a tricky question. It asks when the application depends on a setting in the $home.profile, does it matter whether a file called .bash_profile exists or not? Well, let's look on our system. And remember, you can find quote hidden files, or files that begin with the dot with the A. Okay, -A. And we can see there are many files in our home directory. Oh, well, now I mistakenly was in Etsy. So that will not give us the information we need. How do I get back to home? Just simply CD, right? And then I want to look at all the files in the home directory, and I can see that there is a .profile, but there is not something .bash profile. There's some .bash history logout and something called bash rc, but .bash profile does not currently exist. So to answer this question, you could either do some internet research, or you could create a bash profile file and change some setting that was previously created in .profile and see if the item from the bash profile takes precedent or not, or if the value in .profile stands. Now we're going to create groups: tennis, football, and sports. And what is the way to create a group? Well, the noun followed by the verb. So a really good guess is group add. So let's look at the man page and take a look that, hey, this is how you create a new group. You could just use group add and then followed by any options that you might want and the name of the group. So we're not asked to do anything, rocket science here. We're just going to probably need account elevation, group add, and then tennis. Group add football. And then we can add sports. And how can we double check, verify that we indeed created these groups? Well, special file again in the /etc directory. What is it? It's easy. It's Etsy group, right? So let's look at, we'll use account elevation just to make sure. We'll look at the last half a dozen files in the Etsy group file, and we indeed have the 3 groups that we just created. So we want to make Venus now a member of both tennis and sports, and we're asked to do this in one single command. Okay. You need to do some research again. Do we want to, we've already created Venus, so we don't need to add her again, but we do want to modify her account. So let's look at user mod, and we can take a look at the fact that there is something -G, and we can use that command to add a list of supplementary groups of which the user will be a member. Each group is separated from the next by a comma with, and be careful with this one, no intervening white space. Remember, in the Linux world, whether you have a space or not a space, makes a big difference. So, you have to follow the instructions to the letter, or in this case, to the space. And after you add Venus to the groups tennis and sports, you should be able to verify that she is indeed in those groups, because back here in the Etsy group file, any supplementary members will be in this final line. So you can see that there's a group called Samba Share, and that the account Deborah M is a member of that group as a supplementary member. And then we can use the ID command to verify the groups for Venus. I'm going to use the ID command to look at the account Deborah M, and you can see that you get the user ID, the group ID, and all these many groups to which the Deborah M account is a member. So you'll have similar results for the user Venus. All right, I hope that you gained a lot from this walkthrough and are able to be very successful with your assignment.